There is a story that should be easy to dismiss, and yet it refuses to stay dead. It claims that somewhere in the long collision between Crusader ambition and the older worlds of the Eastern Mediterranean, the Knights Templar came into contact with an Egyptian text tied to Thoth, god of writing, sacred speech, measurement, record, hidden knowledge. Not a common manuscript, not a theological treatise, but something far more dangerous in the imagination. A book, or fragments of a book, said to preserve knowledge that was never meant to move freely from one civilization to another. The claim has everything a legend needs: warrior monks with guarded rituals, Egypt with its scripts that looked to medieval eyes like locked doors, a divine author whose name already carried the weight of wisdom and mystery, and at the center of it all, the most seductive object history can offer: a forbidden text. That is why the story travels so well. It does not ask you to believe only in an artifact. It asks you to believe in continuity, that beneath wars, fallen kingdoms, broken temples, confiscated archives, and public religion, something older survived and was carried west in secret hands. It flatters the modern instinct that official history is incomplete. It gives silence a shape. It gives absence a keeper. But once you step away from the romance of that image, the ground becomes less stable almost immediately. What exactly is this supposed papyrus? Which Book of Thoth are we even talking about? An actual ancient Egyptian textual tradition known today through surviving fragments? A literary tale about a dangerous book hidden in a tomb? A later Hermetic inheritance? Or one of the many much newer occult inventions that borrowed the name because it already sounded ancient and authoritative? The phrase itself turns slippery the moment you touch it. And the Templars, for all the legend wrapped around them, were not born as custodians of occult relics. They were a military order of the Latin Christian world, built for defense, discipline, finance, and war. They lived in a frontier environment that did brush up against Egypt, sometimes violently, sometimes strategically, sometimes in ways that brought them close to cultures older and more text-rich than their own. That much is real. The leap from that reality to a recovered Papyrus of Thoth is the part that demands caution. So this is not a treasure hunt, at least not in the usual sense. We are not beginning with the promise that a lost scroll will appear at the end, vindicated and intact. The more interesting question is not simply whether the Templars found such a thing. It is how several different strands, genuine Egyptian writings associated with Thoth, ancient stories about dangerous books, medieval contact with the Eastern Mediterranean, and much later fantasies about Templar secret wisdom, may have fused into one compelling legend. Because beneath the grand claim, there is something real. Modern scholars do use the label the Ancient Egyptian Book of Thoth for a genuine body of fragmentary text surviving in demotic manuscripts from much later than pharaonic Egypt, but still ancient enough to remind us that this is not pure invention. There were real writings linked, at least in modern scholarship, to the name of Thoth. There were also ancient stories in which a Book of Thoth offered extraordinary knowledge at a terrible cost. Long before the Templars existed, Egypt had already imagined wisdom as something perilous when taken by the wrong hands. That matters. It means the legend did not grow from nothing. But it also means that several different histories may have been stacked on top of one another until they became nearly impossible to separate. Before we venture further into the shadows, take a moment to subscribe so you never miss a secret that history has tried to forget. So the investigation begins with a stricter question than the legend usually allows. Not, did the Templars possess forbidden wisdom? That question is too vague to be useful. The better question is this: is there any serious historical basis for the claim that the Knights Templar retrieved an Egyptian text associated with Thoth? Or are we looking at a myth assembled piece by piece across centuries by people who needed the story to be true? To answer that, we have to